Hello! It is time for me to wrap up the books that I read in May. I'm going to be doing this wrap up a little bit differently to usual because part of May was the Shardathon Bridge 4 round and I'm going to do a Shardathon wrap up for that. So I'm only going to talk about the non-Shardathon books in this particular video, and I'll mention the Shardathon books but then wrap them up properly in that Shardathon wrap up, which is all very complicated, but hopefully it'll make sense when I get into it. First off, I'll start with the statistics. So in May I read 17 books, which I am pretty happy with, and that amounted to 5,299 pages, which is pretty good. 7 of the books that I read were by BIPOC authors, which is better than I've done in previous months, but still it's not 50%, so it could be better. I hauled 6 books, although you just saw a book haul. That was actually in June, technically, so I hauled 6 books in the month of May. I'm pretty sure most, if not all of those, were subscription box type books. I DNF'd 1 book, which I will speak to you about, and I didn't read any books from my top 22 TBR, so I really need to get back to reading those particular books. But for now, I will talk to you about the ones that I did read this month, or last month, in May. So the first book that I read was Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee, but I had actually read that before I filmed my April wrap up, so I spoke about it in my April wrap up. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that one, you can go and watch my April wrap up. I'm not going to speak to you about it again here. So then the next one I read after that was The Kindred by Alicia Dow. I'm not holding up these books because I'm filming this so late that I've already put them all away and I don't want to go and grab them all back out again, so I'll just be putting pictures on the screen. In fact, let me shift myself over a little bit so I have space. So the second book I read was The Kindred by Alicia Dow, and I really enjoyed this one. This is her second book. The first book was The Sound of Stars, which I read in 2020, I think, and it was one of my favourite books that year. Really enjoyed that book. This book I didn't realise was actually set in the same universe as The Sound of Stars, which was an amazing surprise when I figured it out, because I really loved that book and I was hoping for a sequel, and this is kind of like a companion story, so I thoroughly enjoyed that. And it follows 2 characters who are psychically bound, I guess. So on this planet or system that they live in, people are psychically bound to one other person. It's almost like a soulmate type situation, and it doesn't have to be romantic. Sometimes it can be, but it's just like your soulmate that you are psychically linked to, so you can speak to each other in your head and experience each other's lives in that way. And so naturally this was a little bit of a love story, but it was so charming. The world building was fantastic, the characters were amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed myself reading this book. I really enjoy Alicia Dow's writing, and I sent her a message on Instagram to just say how much I loved the book and how I was so pleased when I realised that it was set in the same universe as her debut novel. And she said to me that she has another book coming out next year, so 2023, that is also going to be set in the same universe, which I am super excited for. So that was a really fun read. The next book I read was The Donut Trap by Julie Tu. This is a contemporary romance type of story that is mostly set in a donut shop, so that was super fun. It did make me crave donuts, so warning for that as well. This was just a nice, easy, light read. I don't have too much to say about it, but it was a good time. Then I read Below Zero by Ali Hazelwood, which is one of her 3 novellas that she's had come out over the last few months. This one, as the name might suggest, follows somebody who is on an expedition, I want to say, in the Arctic Circle, and this one is a enemies to lovers romance, and that's all I'll say because it's a novella. I don't want to tell you too much about it, but as usual with Ali Hazelwood's books, this was really cute and fun and steamy in places. I really liked the characters, I really liked the development of the romance, and just like with the first of those novellas of hers that I read, which was Under One Roof, it didn't feel too short, you know. And I might as well say that I did also read the last of those 3 novellas in May as well. That one was Stuck With You, and it was a closed room romance, is that what they're called? I think Enemies to Lovers again, kind of, but again, I don't want to say too much, but same things hold true. Really liked the characters, really enjoyed the plot, really enjoyed the steaminess, really like Ali Hazelwood's books. Next book that I read was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and you might know that I've had a bit of a stop-start relationship with this particular book. I really wasn't sure whether I wanted to read it, and initially the answer was no, because there were some problems that arose over her having had sensitivity readers and then changing the book between them reading it and it being published, and that creating a problem. But those scenes have been removed, so I was happy to read the later version of the book, but I still didn't love it. It was fine, but it didn't really grab me. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't compelled to read it. And yeah, I'm not going to be continuing with the series. I'm not mad that I read it, but I'm not kind of super excited by the fact that I read it either. The next book that I read was a picture book. It is called The Red Tree by Sean Tan. This one was actually a gift from a friend of mine. I was really struggling towards the beginning of May with my mental health, and this is a picture book about depression, and my friend just thought that maybe it would resonate with me, and it definitely did. It's a picture book, so I don't really have much to say about it other than if you also suffer with depression or you want to understand depression a little bit better, then this might be a good one to pick up. Then I read the 3rd book in the Alcatraz series. So this one was Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians and the Knights of Crystalia, and same feelings for this one as for the previous ones in the series. I like it, I like the characters, I like the humour, it's fun, it's fast paced, it's an adventure, it's middle grade. There's not too much to say about it. I'm enjoying the experience of reading this series. And then the last book that I read before I started Chartathon was The Starless Crown by James Rollins, which I liked, but I didn't love as much as I was hoping to. I felt like it dragged a little bit in the middle. So this is the first book in a new fantasy series, and I think, if I remember correctly, that the author usually writes in kind of the mystery thrillery type genre, and this is their sort of debut fantasy book, and it kind of reads like that a little bit, but it reads like someone who writes and has been writing for some time but hasn't been writing in fantasy. So it had that kind of fantasy debut feel about it, but with the elevated writing that you usually get with someone who's an experienced author. This is a multiple perspective story, and I think actually that was the thing that I struggled with the most in this particular book. I'm pretty used to reading multiple perspective fantasy stories. That's something that I'm very familiar with, and I usually don't have too much problem differentiating one character from another, but I did struggle with that a little bit in this one. It wasn't always clear straight away, particularly since I was reading it on audio, who it was that we were dealing with at any given time, and the magic system wasn't especially well explained, I didn't feel like, and I don't know whether that was intentional or whether it was just that the author didn't explain it properly. So I think I'd need to read like the next book in the series to get an idea of whether or not it was an intentional thing that, you know, we're learning about the magic as the characters are learning about the magic, which is something that happens, so I'm not going to fault it for that. This is a brand new release, so I won't be able to read the sequel for a while. But yeah, I just felt like there was a lot about it that made it a little bit difficult for me to keep up with, and that was a shame because I actually really quite liked the writing of this one in a sort of a general sense. So I didn't love the way that the story was put together, but I liked the way that it was sort of structurally written, if that makes any kind of sense. I don't know. I did also like the characters, but it was very difficult to bond with the characters because I was having so much difficulty always deciphering who it was that I was dealing with at any given time. So that was a bit of a challenge as well, unfortunately. But we essentially follow 3 characters who become unlikely allies. It's not a particularly not particularly unheard of trope. So we have a student who has been learning to use magic, a thief who was in prison and is escaped, and a prince but not the heir to the throne, like the, you know, the spare. Not the heir, the spare, you know, and usually drunken antics, all that sort of thing, and he has to kind of become responsible for the situations that he finds himself in. I always really struggle to not say too much when I'm giving synopses, so that's all I'll say. And I did enjoy it, but I feel like it could have been done better. And then the rest of the books that I read in May, I read for Shardathon, so I will just run through them, but I won't speak about them here. You can wait for the Shardathon wrap-up video, which should be coming fairly soon, because as I'm filming this, it is the last day of Shardathon right now. So the other books that I read in May that were for Shardathon were The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, Dead Collections by Isaac Fellman, Race to the Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, Finley Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead by Elle Cosimano, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, Stuck With You by Ali Hazelwood, which I already mentioned, Brace for Impact by Gabe Montesante, The No Family by Grace K. Shim, and The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. So if you want to hear my thoughts on any of those, you can tune in for my Shardathon wrap-up, which, as I say, should be coming very soon. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks. Bye.